Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff, and today with us we have a very special guest. Her name is Loida Lewis. She is not only a philanthropist, she's an activist, she's a humanitarian, a great businesswoman, and an all-round wonderful person. Loida, welcome, and thank you for joining us. And Loida, we like to start sometimes from the very beginning of someone's life. Now, you were raised in the Philippines. Did you start your philanthropy in the Philippines? How did you get involved in this whole process?
Well, I was born of a father who was orphaned when he was 12 and lived with a rich uncle. My mother was middle class. Her father was working and had work. So when they got married in the province of Sorsogon, my father always said, in order to be successful, you have to have faith in God. So from early on, my father would donate to the church. And my mother would be head of the Catholic Women's League. So in the family, there has always been the tradition of giving to others, giving to the church.
And that is so incredibly important. I know when I grew up here on Long Island in Hicksville, and I went to 12 years of Catholic school where the nuns taught us the importance of giving back. But in actuality, all religions teach the importance of giving back. So, Loida, you went on to go to law school in the Philippines, and I understand you came to the United States and took the New York State Bar in 1974, and you were the first woman from the Philippines, or first Asian woman in the entire world to pass the New York State Bar. How did that feel? And how did it feel entering the law profession, which back then was pretty much all men?
Well, my father, as I said, wanted to be a lawyer. And because of his 5 children, I'm the more articulate, the more driven, the more, aggressive in a way. So he said, Loida, you'll be the lawyer. So when I took the bar, I finished law in the Philippines, University of the Philippines. I took the bar. And when I became a lawyer, my father said, go to the United States as my gift. And then come back and start your career. All the way, Sorsogon, my province, and then all the way to possibly politics. So when I was here in the United States, that's when I met the love of my life, Reginald Lewis. So we went back to get married.
To the Philippines?
To the Philippines. And so we lived here in New York. I'm a lawyer already in the Philippines, and I couldn't take the bar. So in 1974, the United States Supreme Court said, citizenship should not be a requirement to take the bar. And because the University of the Philippines is accepted by New York State as equal to education in the United States, they allowed me to take the bar without studying in the United States. And by that time, we had already Leslie, our first daughter. And I said, I have to pass this the first time. So I studied. I exiled her to my mother-in-law in Baltimore. I studied 14 hours a day, and I passed.
And were you a working mother all your life, or did you stop working, or with this tremendous degree of law, did you continue with a family?
Yes, I was. When my daughter was born, I wanted to become a lawyer first in the government service. And so I applied, and they denied me. So I sued them for discrimination, and after 3 years, I won it. And they gave me 3 years back pay. So I've been a government lawyer of the Immigration and Naturalization Service, equivalent to 10 years, although I only worked for 7. So yes. I was a working mother.
Now, you wrote a very important book on immigration. I believe you did this early on, and it's gone into its 10th printing, correct?
12th now.
12th,
yes.
Amazing. Can
yes.
you tell us a little bit about that book and how it's helped so many people?
Well, because I was working in immigration, and then my husband bought Beatrice International Foods, leveraged buyout for $1 billion. At that time, it was the largest acquisition by an African American. So he did all the pages. And because we were going to live in Paris, since that's where the bulk of the business was, I had to quit. And so when I was in Paris, you can only do shopping, you can only do, learn French. So I said, what should I do? I have all this knowledge about immigration, so I wrote the book. Now, How to Get a Green Card, and it's on its 12th edition. That's how it happened.
And is it easy to get a green card today? I don't think so.
Well, with this president that we have now, he has stopped even those who have approval of green card, they're back in their country to get it from the American embassy. No green card are being given to anybody.
Well, right now, let's get back to the interview because we're with Loida Lewis, and Loida Lewis is a resident here in East Hampton, New York, a fascinating woman, a very intelligent woman. She was married to Reginald Lewis, who passed away in 1993. Now, Reginald Lewis, for all of our watchers, he was one of the most important men ever because he was the first African-American man who actually ran and owned a billionaire company, Beatrice Foods. Now, I remember, I'm dating myself, but I was in graduate school of business at Columbia University getting my MBA, and I remember a case study on Beatrice Foods. So anyway, so tell us a little bit about your marriage to Reginald. Here you were from the Philippines. He was born in the United States?
He's from Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Yes.
And what a fascinating life you must have had together.
Yes, I must say, because I didn't intend to get married. When I was in law school, I almost entered a convent.
I can't believe.
Yeah, being raised Catholic, studying in a Catholic school by Benedictine nuns from Germany. So my mother said, don't stop now. You have 2 more years to go. So continue it. And I continued. I went into politics in school, in the university, and went to the United States. So while I was here in the United States, I said, what will I do? Why not work? So I did work. And my boss was a Harvard Law School graduate, a classmate of Reginald Lewis. So when I introduced him to my sister and they're going out on a date, my boss said, I'll fix you a blind date, double date, your sister and me, and you and my friend, my classmate. And that's how I met Reginald Lewis on a blind date.
And did your sister get married to the man she was dating?
No, she's still single.
Well,
she never married. Some things are like that. Life happens.
Absolutely. A lot of people today decide not to get married. But you got married to Reginald, and then you got very involved, besides work and raising your family, the two of you got very involved in philanthropy.
Well, my husband, when he bought Beatrice International, had always, even when he was just a practicing lawyer, every Christmas, he would take out his checkbook, write $10 to Harvard Law School, because he was accepted without ever applying, to his mother's church, and to the New York Christmas. I think they have something where you donate.
Yes.
So from my husband, he also had that spirit of giving, and from myself, the spirit of giving is something that you don't wait until you have money. The spirit of giving is within you, that because you have been, to those who have much, much is expected.
Of course.
So you share, and that's our life.
Yes, and this goes back to successful philanthropy. And do you know that anyone can be a philanthropist? I say this in every show because I want everyone to hear it. If you don't have the money, you give your time and your knowledge. And that's very, very important. That's the spirit of giving, as Loida is telling us. Now, I want to point out one thing you just mentioned. Your husband got into Harvard Law School without ever applying. How did that happen?
Well, in 1965, the civil rights movement was very, very, it was prevalent, meaning to say people were marching, have freedom rides to the South. So Harvard Law School said, what should we do? We cannot rally, but we can teach law. And so how can black and brown, basically African Americans, have a concept of what is law if we don't expose them. So they wrote to all the historically black colleges and universities, give us your top 10 students. 5. And so at that 1965 summer, my husband was one of them from Virginia State University. And he said, during these 8 weeks, I am just going to study so hard and work so hard and participate that they will say, I'm a good student for Harvard Law School.
He was a great student.
Yes.
And look what your husband turned out to be.
That's it.
And that shows that when you give people opportunity, they can achieve. And whether you're of any background, and say you grew up very, very underserved in a community where there's really not good education, we have to make opportunity available, our country. And I'm so glad that Harvard made, well, your husband at that point was a top student anyway, but they took a chance on your husband. And then he ended up running and owning a $1 billion company. I mean, this is an extraordinary story of success and of achievement. He achieved because he was given the opportunity to go to Harvard Law School. Harvard, I like you.
Yes, actually, that's Harvard taught him how to achieve great wealth through acquisition of businesses. So in his mind, he will always buy. He was practicing law. He was having a good practice. We had a 3-bedroom house in East Hampton. He was driving a foreign car, Mercedes. So we had all the trappings of success. But for him, that's not enough. He wanted to buy a company. Because when you buy a business, the sky is the limit.
That's right. And that company ended up being worth billions of dollars, correct?
He bought it for borrowed money, leveraged buyout, they said, for $1 billion. 64 companies in 31 countries.
Amazing.
Yes.
And that was back when?
1987, he bought it. But sadly, 5 years later, he died without finishing it. So I was totally devastated, and I really couldn't think right. But after 1 year, the business was failing. It's going to bankruptcy. And in my mind, he worked on this. Failure is not an option for me. Mm-hmm. And so I started interviewing CEOs to take over. First, all of them were asking for a lot of money. Secondly, they are all white, and it is an African-American company headed by
right.
And thirdly, nobody can assure me that they're going to be successful. And so if it fails, we're out, with an empty bag. So I said, I better take it over myself.
So you ended up being the CEO and president of the company.
Well, he had majority control of the stocks. So if the board of directors didn't elect me, I would fire them all.
Interesting. And you did a good job.
Well, first of all, I knew that if you have so much expenses and your income is just here, common sense, cut expenses. So I did. I did a painful job of firing 50% of our corporate staff.
That's a tough thing.
Selling the corporate jet, which he loved. Selling our limousines or cutting off the leases of our limousines. And going down to, from a full floor, 30,000 square feet, going down to 7,000 square feet.
So you scaled everything down.
You cut expenses.
To.
You have to.
You have to if you're not making the money that you need to make. And
exactly.
It's very hard to fire people.
The most important thing is to have the wisdom and perception to hire the right people.
Right.
And I did. And so for 7 years, with my right people, we increased sales. Now it's $2 billion company. And then I started, first I wanted to sell everything, but because it's a conglomerate, nobody wants to buy an ice cream and a food company and a bottling company. So I sold piece by piece. I paid down the debt, whatever is left of the 1 billion debt, 0 debt, and then by selling piece by piece, I got 1 billion back.
Not bad. So you are a great businesswoman. Not only are you an accomplished lawyer, you are a businesswoman, you are a philanthropist, you are an amazing person. You're a real success story. And I want to hear a little bit about your philanthropy, because this show is all about philanthropy. And for those watching, philanthropy can be achievable for all. And of course, the super wealthy have a great obligation to get involved, to give back to community, But we all can be philanthropists. So tell me a little bit about the foundation you and your husband put together, and what was your focus?
Well, education is our focus.
So
Before
important.
Mr. Lewis died, the company was not sold. 10% of the company in his will should go to the Reginald F. Lewis Foundation. So when we sold it, it was funded. And since education was the key to his success,
To everybody's success.
To everybody's success, before he died, he said 5 million to 3 million to Harvard Law School. That was 1990. And so from
Great.
that, scholarships were given.
Wonderful.
And also giving scholarship, fellowship to people of color so that they can teach law, so that those who are not white can say, oh, here's a professor who is black, who is Latino, who's a woman. So that's one. After he died, he also said, give 5 million to an African American Museum of History and Culture. And 10 years later, Baltimore passed a law that 30 million will go to a Museum of African American History and Culture. Just the same name. So when we said to the chair, my husband said, give 5 million. What do we get in place of that? For 5 million, you'll get a building named after him. So there's a Reginald F. Lewis Museum in Maryland of African American History and Culture.
Which is wonderful, because he deserves to have a building named after him. Your husband did so much to promote education and also to inspire people from all backgrounds and all colors, so that they can know that everyone can achieve. You know, I am a woman, I'm a New Yorker. I live in New York, I have a home in Southampton. One of the reasons why I love New York is because of its diversity. Without diversity, the city is not of interest to me. And what does diversity mean to all of us? It means that we all need to have a fair and equal chance at education, at jobs, at everything. So on that note, you also started the All-Star Code, which is a charity, or I think your daughter started this. And
yes.
So just the way your parents were involved in philanthropy in the Philippines, you and your husband got involved in philanthropy, and then you passed it on to your daughter, correct?
Yes.
And that's a wonderful thing.
Not so much pass it on, because she will say, no, I thought it over myself. But we have trained them enough, and you to train your children while they were young. It will come out from them. And so when she attended a conference of 2,000 people in tech, she was the only black. And maybe there was one Chinese or one Asian.
What year was that about?
This is 2013. And so she asked the Reginald F. Lewis, give me a starting 100,000 so that I can find out, do the research. She was a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and then she quit. She got married, she had children. Anyway, she said, and we gave her that sort of like incubation. Mm-hmm. And so she found out that out of the technology where wealth is being created, only 9% black and brown are employed.
Oh, and that's
and
not good.
Out of the ownership, only 1% are black and brown. So she said, I have to go to the high school boys. And that's when she created All-Star Code.
And you have a gala every year. I know
Every
I've
year
gone
here
in the
East
past,
Hampton.
and I believe it's at a very special place in East Hampton.
Yes, in our, yeah. Well, I bought, my husband wanted us, when our house burned in Amagansett, he said, let's go to East Hampton and buy this Minskoff house. It's on the bluff. But he was overbidden by David Geffen, and then he died. Mm-hmm. 1 year later, the broker came to me and said, David Geffen, walk away from the deal. I said, I knew it. He was working up there because he wants us to have it. I had no money then.
So you have a beautiful home.
We have a beautiful home, and that's where we have it.
I remember, and how many people were there? The years I went, I think it was about 500 people. People would actually come from New York City to come to this gala. Now, it was an amazing gala, and one of a lot of hope, and just people coming together. Of course, they're donating and celebrating, and then funding education for young boys of color, brown and black, you told me, and then
some Asian.
And wonderful. And so what happened this year with the gala?
Well, because of COVID, we did a virtual gala. And in a way, we netted the same amount of money as when we had during the regular times. And so since then, around 750 young men of color, African American, Latino, have been trained in 6 weeks. They've been trained on how to do coding and all manner of technology. And some of them have graduated. They are now working in Google, working in Facebook, and many other, and earning good money, not flipping burgers.
So I have a few questions. Say I'm not, but if I were a young man and I wanted to apply for this program, how do I do that? Where do I go?
High school, not college, but high school. You have to apply by writing an application. Basically, you don't have to say, I know how to code, I know computer. No, you may have no knowledge, but you have to answer difficult questions. Something like, how have you overcome any obstacle in your young life? What are your goals for success? Or what are your, how do you become successful? Things like that. So it's how you answer the question will be the temperament that you will be accepted. Because this year, we have around 1,000 applications.
And how many were accepted?
160 seats. Yes, it's been known already. It's the 7th year. And so they're starting now, it's, I think, August. Yes, they have graduated. All on virtual. They did not have to go to school.
And then part of this show is to talk about different charities, of course, the leaders of Philanthropy. And Loida Lewis here with me is a great leader, a woman who's done so much. But how can we donate to this All-Star Code?
Allstarcode.org. And, for those who are saying, well, I'm not quite into education, my daughter, Christina Lewis, again, just started on her own an organization that got now around 300 black organizations, not for profit, for all manner, in one organization, in one click. It's GiveBlack.org. And so if you're interested in culture, museum, education, whatever, go over there and you'll see 300 organizations, not for profit, that is all in one computer, in one technology.
Well, I'm really very impressed with everything you have done, your husband has done, and now your daughter. And I love that you're giving people opportunity, because just the way you had opportunity, your husband had opportunity, even I feel I had opportunity. I grew up in a very middle-class family. My father was a school teacher, yet I ended up going to Columbia University as an undergraduate and getting a degree in physical therapy and then getting an MBA at Columbia. Someone created opportunity, and we must create opportunity for everyone in education. One last question. We have a few minutes left. What about the terrible racial divide that we have now? To me, a top priority is that we have racial justice in our country, and that everyone has a fair chance at education, everyone is treated fairly, and that everyone can get a job, and that no one is ever discriminated against because of their sex, their color. What about this, and how do you feel today?
Well, systemic racism is in the history of the United States, and it has never really been taken out. And so for all people, especially people who are not black, you don't know, you have to study and know. And just even now, that somebody who killed 2 people because he's white, yes, the policeman is very concerned about his welfare, whereas somebody else who had committed something, bang, 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 So there is something wrong in that mentality that because you're black, you're guilty. Whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Whether you're sleeping or whether you're selling cigarettes or whether you passed a $20 bill, you die. Okay? So this systemic racism here is in the surroundings. So each one of us have to understand, If you're walking in a black man's shoes or a black woman's shoes, how does it feel? And so we have to be conscious of that. And
we
for
have
that
to
reason,
show compassion and understanding,
Yes,
and
yes.
we must, and I don't want to interrupt you, but we absolutely must always put ourselves in someone else's shoes to see how we would be and how we would react. And from there, then I think we will start understanding one another. We also have to socialize with one another. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. You cannot understand somebody else if you don't want to talk to him or you don't want to understand. But really, the very basic thing is that we are all equal in the eyes of God. And therefore, how can you treat somebody badly just because of the color of his skin or just because he speaks with a foreign accent? So that's not right.
And I agree with you.
Can I get a plug?
Yes.
Okay. September 10, my husband's book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? How Reginald Lewis Created a $1 billion Business Empire, is going to be on Audible. It's
fabulous.
Going to be, people are not reading now anymore, especially the young kids. And if you read it, you will be inspired because I have met so many people. I read your husband's book, I changed my life. I read your husband's book, I changed my career.
One more time, the name of the book?
The book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? That's what he said when he was 6 years old.
Thank you all for tuning in. This completes today's show, Successful Philanthropy, with a wonderful guest, Loida Lewis. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next week.